Hello and welcome to the Vibe Mentor podcast episode number 1. This is the place for conscious, purpose-driven entrepreneurs who are looking to remove the blocks that hold them back so you can step into your purpose and manifest your abundance birthright through it. Hello, hello, hello. So excited to have you here with us. My name is Rebecca. I go by Rebecca Dawn, the Vibe Mentor. I am a single mother of 3 children and extremely excited to be assisting people in overcoming complex trauma, reprogramming the conditioning that holds them back from their purpose. It is truly an honor and a blessing to be here with you. It is interesting how all of this came about. I started with a YouTube channel and, of course, realized that in order to reach the people who prefer to listen and not watch, that a podcast episode would be necessary to do that. So here we are. As I started out on my journey about 2 years ago, I first wanted to help people step into their purpose. That is what I felt called to do. I felt that that was my purpose. Your purpose is my purpose. And what I discovered after meeting with person after person after person was that these good, beautiful, kind-hearted people were held back by something called complex trauma. It's unfortunate how many good people experience addiction or coping mechanisms that are like self-sabotage and hold them back and keep them from what they are designed to do. And so in order for us to unleash the human potential and unleash the purpose and ability that is locked within you, we must remove the conditioning and programming and heal any trauma that might be there that is holding you back. It is amazing how many beautiful world changers are out there and how many of us have all experienced something similar and just don't even realize it. So you'll hear me use the term trauma. Trauma is kind of what I call the big T word. Some of us will say, I don't have trauma. My childhood was fine. And it is true that a vast majority of the world has not experienced traditional trauma, but many of us have experienced something called complex trauma. Now, if you did not feel safe, seen, heard, cared for, or loved for an extended period of time at any point in your life, you likely experienced something called complex trauma. Now, it's not a black and white measure where I can say if you experience this, then you definitely have complex trauma. It is about the perception of the individual, the perception of the child, and whether or not they perceived whether or not they were being taken care of. So, one other point about complex trauma I want to cover, I don't want to confuse you, but I often prefer to use the technical terms so that you can understand that this is science-based. What we are dealing with when we're looking at someone who has experienced complex trauma, and whether or not you associate with having trauma, don't let that hold you back. If you have the blocks that keep you from doing things that you know you should do or you want to do, but you can't quite seem to make it happen, this is what you need in the way of healing, is understanding how complex trauma works, how your brain and body work, and how to heal it. So I'm going to go into this description of what complex trauma is and how it works with the brain, but know that if I ever use that T word and it causes a bit of a grind for you, then just replace it with conditioning or programming. Okay. So we have 2 parts of the brain involved when we are setting out on a goal. Well, all of the parts of the brain are involved, but there's 2 that I want to speak to right now. When we're setting out to do something like step into our purpose, make a big change in our world or in our life, and we know all of the things we need to do. Now I'm going to point to my forehead here. This is the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that's in front on your forehead is in charge of executive function. It's in charge of intelligent decision. So when you know, air quotes, you know you should do something, or you know, air quotes, what you need to do to make something happen, but you can't quite seem to make it work. What's happening is that front of your brain is battling with the back of your brain. So down towards your spine, towards the back of your neck, the lower part of your head where it meets your neck, that's called the limbic brain. The limbic brain is very close to the emotional part of the brain. It works with sort of your conditions and programs. It helps keep you safe. Some people will say it's the oldest part of the brain or call it the reptilian part of the brain. What we need to know is it essentially is the battle of the brains. The front of the brain is battling with the back of the brain. And the front of the brain says, I'm going to go change the world. I'm going to step into my purpose. I'm going to manifest abundance. I'm going to create a new earth, a heaven on earth, do something that matters out in the world, make a difference, find a fulfilling life, make my dreams come true, whatever it is for you. And then the back of the brain comes in and says, yeah, but that's not safe. That's not familiar. That's not something that we should do, because then you're going to risk getting hurt or rocking the boat, or maybe you won't have any money, or maybe people will reject you, or whatever the fears are. Your limbic brain, the back part of the brain, says, yeah, that's not safe. And the most interesting part of all is that the limbic brain, the back part of the brain, will always win over the prefrontal cortex, or the front of the brain, the intelligent part of the brain. Because it is emotional and it has all sorts of reasons. From a scientific perspective, the prefrontal cortex is considered cut off, or you could say offline or hijacked, when the back part of the brain becomes inflamed, or if it identifies any sort of external stimuli as dangerous or risky. Essentially, the emotional part of the brain takes over and we can't think properly. And so this is why we feel like we've got that tug of war. Maybe you self-sabotage. Maybe you feel extreme fatigue, or you feel system shut down due to overwhelm, or you're fearing rejection, right? People pleasers often worry about being rejected or judged or criticized or ostracized. That again, connecting with the oldest part of the brain, is a very primal fear that if you were kicked out of the tribe many, many years ago, you would have died. And so oftentimes the limbic brain can feel like, that back part of the brain can feel like, you will die if you do these things. And that is sort of its modus of operation. A mode of operation is it believes that it is keeping you safe and rescuing you from death by keeping you from your dreams and changing your life. So when you think about your brain and your body, your entire being, oftentimes we end up in the head. Many times, especially in our society today, we are very mental. We are constantly running around on the hamster wheel of thought, trying to solve problems, trying to figure out what problems might come and what solutions we need to put into place. Now, the problem is we use a small percentage of the vast library of resources that are available to us. So if you consider from your head to your toes a library of resources, but we are only using the couple inches at the top of our head in our brain, we are missing out on quite a few resources that can assist and help us. Now, the body keeps the score. So when you have experienced that feeling of not being safe or seen or heard or cared for or loved, that opened a trauma response. So it opened a fight or flight, fawn or freeze response in your body. And if you, especially if you were young as a child and you weren't able to get out of that situation, or you weren't able to shift and change that situation so that it suited you, that trauma response remained open. And so it is housed in the body. So oftentimes we can feel like the body is a problem, or the body is what causes me pain. Or if you experience sexual trauma, the body was the source of what drew that trauma to you. And so we disassociate from our body. We detach from our body. We are pulled up and out of our body by being in our brain, which is why we end up foregoing or not using these resources that are available to us. So I'll get into sort of the how do we heal, but it's important to know that the body is a critical component of understanding our conditioning and our program, removing our blocks, and healing our traumas. Now, another important part about the body is it is the source of our emotional guidance system. So instead of our GPS, it is our EGS, our emotional guidance system. And we are cut off from that guidance system when we disassociate or detach or try to escape our body. This again holds us back. The body is a beautiful, beautiful resource. I like to think of my body as the mother that nurtures and holds my soul. She loves me. She knows what's right for me. In fact, the brain is often the last to know. The body will sense things far quicker than the brain is capable of, because actually the body is out there to gather that information and send it to the brain. So we want to start to see our body in a new way. We want to start to make friends with our body and understand that emotions are the sensations, or I hesitate to use the word feeling, but they are the sensations in our body. A feeling is an emotion plus a story. So when our brain says, oh, they always treat me that way, and that's why I feel so angry and frustrated, that's a feeling because it was combined with a story. But before all of that happened was an emotion, a sensation in the body that said, oh, something about that wasn't quite right. And it is that emotional guidance system that we want to start to get back in touch with as we go through this process. So let's look at how is trauma created. Like I said, it can be a wide range of events. It can include abuse, neglect, accidents, natural disasters, and more. But like I said, it is up to the perception of the person. So if they were cared for and they were held safe, they were loved, but somehow they didn't feel safe or cared for or loved, that perception alone is enough. It does not have to technically be a natural disaster or abuse to create an open trauma response in the body. And that's why I like to say many more people in the world experience this than realize it. Another way I think that this kind of shows up, and I don't know that we want to technically say it, trauma is recreated. That remains to be seen, and hopefully I'll be participating in those studies in the near future. I am pursuing a psychology degree as well. Maybe should have said that up front, but now you know. Um, what is interesting about our society today is the media and the marketing that is suggestive that if you don't buy the product, or if you're not as skinny, or you're not as good looking, or you don't own this car, or you don't do this thing, or you have this skin rash, or whatever it is, it's the basic tenet of marketing is to convince you that you need this thing, and without it, there's a problem. And that in and of itself can create this feeling of unworthiness. It can create this feeling of not enoughness. And it's interesting how that directly connects to the sensations or the emotions that are felt by someone who has experienced trauma. Essentially, when we didn't feel cared for, we internalized the problem or the reason for that as being our own problem. We are the source of the problem. There's something wrong with me. And because they didn't treat me well, they didn't give me what I needed, they weren't there for me, there must be something wrong with me. And so, whether it's traditional trauma or complex trauma, or just conditioning and programming from the marketing out in the world, most people in the world are dealing with that feeling of I'm not enough. And it can take on different flavors. It can look like I'm not enough, there's never enough, the world is not enough, people are not safe, I'm not safe, the world is not safe. It usually is connected with safety and feelings of enoughness, whether or not it's you not being enough, or another not being enough, or just the world not being enough. So it is directly connected, and interesting how there's different facets of it. It's kind of like different flavors of ice cream. So what does it look like? How do we know if we're struggling with this? How do we know if this is the block that's holding me back from my purpose? This is the thing that is keeping me from reaching my fullest potential. Here are some trauma responses. I'm going to run through a pretty big list here. Keep track, and I will let you know at the end sort of how to decipher this. Right? Trauma can often have a profound impact on our mental, emotional, and physical well-being. So again, going back to the point that the body keeps the score, that this open trauma response or this open trauma loop is kept in your body. It's housed and stored in your body until it is healed and released. Imagine if you have experienced many different situations that made you feel like there was a problem with you, then you are dealing with more than one. And so what does that do to the body? It creates dis-ease. You are not at ease, but you can also over time experience disease because of this. Part of a fight, flight, fawn, or freeze response is that you are in a obviously stressed state. and the brain has to match in chemistry the image that we have given it. So if you have gone through life and experienced some sort of trigger or some sort of situation that the brain believed was unsafe, your trauma response was triggered, you are put into a sympathetic nervous system state, and the brain has identified there is a problem. And so what it does is it floods the body with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. Those hormones are very acidic for the body. When you live in a constant state of fight, flight, fawn, or freeze, if you are in hypervigilance, if you are constantly feeling on edge, like there's always a problem, you're constantly navigating the world looking for what's going to go wrong next, that will create disease in the body. Autoimmune is one of the most common, but there are so many that are directly connected. And there is research and science on that. I can definitely get into that in the near future, right? It can also affect how we see ourselves, how we relate to others, and how we relate to the world. Our perception is, you could say jaded, you could say impact. I like to think of it as layers, kind of like an onion, that we have these layers of film over our eyes. And as we experience the world and we filter through our experiences, we're defining them or explaining them to ourselves or labeling them or bucketing them in ways that make sense to us relative to our initial experiences. And so if someone doesn't look you in the eye or they cut you off, you somehow have decided that that means that it's something about you, that I'm not enough. There's a problem with me. I'm weird. I'm not normal, right? I'm not enough. Okay. Another way that this can show up, I mentioned a little bit earlier, but system overwhelm, shutdown, fatigue. Most commonly, I see people pleasing, overgiving, high sensitivity. High sensitivity is an interesting one because some identify as an empath and their sensitivity can be a great superpower, but it can also be debilitating when we can't handle all of the different sensations that we feel. And some don't even want to hear that this is a trauma response. It somehow takes away from what can be a superpower. But the fact of the matter is, some can be born with high sensitivity without trauma. That is known. But a vast majority of us who are hypersensitive, and I do identify as highly sensitive, it came from growing up in that environment where we didn't feel safe and we had to consistently sort of navigate the world or scan the world to figure out who's here, what do they want to need, and who do I need to be in this situation so that I don't rock the boat and create more pain for myself. So that sensitivity is also pattern recognition. It is also just a shifting and changing in your brain's both physical and guess you could say chemical structure. It becomes, we overcompensate in areas of our brain that we typically would not, in order to be able to sense what is going on so that we can keep ourselves safe in that environment. Another trauma response would be taking responsibility for how others feel. And this is directly connected to that sensitivity that oftentimes, because we feel someone's discomfort, it makes us uncomfortable. We know they're uncomfortable. We've often taken responsibility for making them uncomfortable. And so then it becomes our responsibility to also fix it for them. And sometimes we do that because we feel bad for how they feel, but we partially also do it because it makes us uncomfortable. And so we don't quite realize that this is also enabling and it is causing atrophy in their own ability to grow and shift and change, that when we fix problems for people, that we are preventing them or even robbing them from the experience that could help sharpen them and make them stronger. And so when we solve other people's problems, that is also a trauma response. Another one that unfortunately comes right after that is isolation, hermit mode, perpetual healing, however you call it. But if you are avoiding life and avoiding people, that is not good for you. And in fact, when we avoid our triggers, we are also robbing ourselves of the opportunity to shift and grow and change. Although that being said, if you have lived in hypervigilance or you're just coming out of a toxic relationship, there is that time that is needed for healing, and isolation may be on the docket for a time. The key is that should not be your perpetual state. Okay. Surprisingly, excessive control, being a controlling person. I really struggled to embrace this one when I heard of it and when I was healing in my healing journey. I didn't want to believe that I was a controlling person, but the truth is when we feel out of control in our toxic environments, we grow and develop a need to stay in control, and that is part of what keeps us safe. That is part of what makes us feel safe, is having a sense of control. But we don't realize that we end up having an excessive tendency towards control later in life because of that. Also connected to that is perfectionism, that if we feel like we do everything right, if we are a good person, if we overgive, if we do a good job at work, if we are an overachiever in school, then we have somehow validated or proven that we are worthy, that we deserve to be treated properly. Unfortunately, that is not the right way to go about it. And perfectionism will also hurt you. It does also perpetuate that hypervigilant state. Rumination, self-neglect and abandonment, toxic self-blame, self-harm or sabotage, self-punishment, extreme toxic inner critic. You could be caught in the victim triangle. Maybe you're a victim or a saint or a martyr. You struggle to receive. We over exaggerate interpretations of criticism or rejection. We have an extreme mistrust for others. We rarely feel safe. We live in hypervigilance, and we are often even pessimistic or catastrophizing, which again is directly connected to the brain's program to go out and search for the problem so that we can stay on top of it. Depression and anxiety go hand in hand with this state of being. And it's interesting, I've never really said it that way, but if you don't want to call it trauma or even conditioning and programming, it really is a state of being. Your physical body is in a certain state of being, in the sympathetic nervous system state, that hypervigilance, and it will lead to depression and anxiety. It also, of course, is directly connected to low self-esteem and high levels of shame. Now, depression and anxiety, it needs a whole different episode. They're both worthy of an entire hour of conversation at the very least, but just briefly, depression tends to come about when we are stuck in the past, and anxiety is derived by being in the future. That is why you hear so much talk about being present, being in the now. And it is true that the only place we can create is in the present. And so if we are in the now thinking about the past, we are recreating more of the past. If we are in the present but thinking about the future, we are likely again creating more of the things we fear, recreating more of the same inadvertently. We don't realize that we're doing it. It is sort of a tug of war between wanting to self-actualize and wanting connection, and yet feeling unsafe and staying stuck because we believe that, or the subconscious brain believes that this change that we desire will destroy us. We often disconnect, like I said, from our bodies and our emotions, but even our relationships. And I mentioned that a little bit earlier too, but it is worth repeating that our emotions, our bodies, and our relationships are the keys to healing. And yet those are the very things that we have cut ourselves off from. This again will lead to that feeling of being stuck. We're uncertain of how to escape this prison that we have created for ourselves, both in our bodies and our minds. The pain seems like it will never end, and we can never get away from it. We can feel like life will never change. We don't deserve to be happy, or we don't deserve to have our dreams. When we're carrying unresolved trauma, it can create negative energy that blocks us from what we want to attract. It literally will block you from everything that you desire that you don't currently have, because it means that shift and change that looks unsafe to the subconscious. If we fear abandonment, here's just an example. If we fear abandonment due to childhood trauma, we may unknowingly attract relationships that reinforce the fear of abandonment. It is pretty incredible how sort of life itself will bring to us the opportunity to see the wound. And when we're a good person and we feel like we're doing all of the things we should be doing, but we keep getting hurt, it can feel like, what did I do wrong? Why do I keep getting punished? I remember asking myself, was I a murderer in a past life? Did I do something so bad and so wrong that I deserve this punishment? And I'm happy to report that that is not the case. That life is just bringing to you opportunities that unfortunately trip your trigger. But it is the trigger and the wounding and the mirror of life that allows you to see where you need to direct your healing. Another example would be that if we have a belief that we are unworthy of success, we may struggle to manifest abundance in our careers or in our finance. We may inadvertently self-sabotage or just have this compulsion to spend all of our money until it's gone, or maybe even shows up as a fear of looking at your bank account or an avoidance of paying your bills. Ultimately, there is that need for the brain to prove to itself its beliefs are true. And unfortunately, confirmation bias is a real thing in psychology. You will find the evidence that you need to prove your beliefs true. That is, of course, until we understand how to work with the brain and the body to heal and reprogram these beliefs and your subconscious programming. So if you've ever had that feeling of like, there's got to be something more to life, this cannot be all there is. What is the point? Why even do this? There's got to be more. If you've had that feeling, that searching or seeking, it's like an unquenchable thirst. No matter how much you absorb new information or you learn new things or you try new things, it feels like I still haven't scratched the itch. It's so far and deep down inside of me, I can't reach it. I like to call that your purpose. Your soul is urging you towards the thing you were designed to do. You were made perfectly imperfect for a purpose. You are here for a reason. It is statistically impossible that you are here in the body that you are with the set of talents that you have. It is not possible for you to be an accident. There are no coincidences. So that yearning, that urge to search, that desire for more, the unquenchable thirst is there to drive you towards the reason you were created. Your dreams, your desires, your yearnings, your gifts, your talents, the things that light you up, the things that turn you on, the things that light a fire in you, they are all there for a reason, to drive you towards the thing you were made to do. I don't know if you've noticed, but the world is kind of a crazy place right now, and it's not looking so good. The cookie is crumbling. And the beautiful thing is, you don't have to worry about that. The way you contribute to making the world a better place is by taking care of you, by healing your trauma and stepping into your purpose, by reconditioning and programming yourself so you can remove these blocks that keep you from the thing you were designed for. That's it. We don't have to boil an ocean. We don't have to take care of our mother or our brother or our sister. You just have to sweep in front of your own door. So ultimately, at the end of the day, to me, it looks like there's two choices. We can keep doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, which is the definition of crazy as stated by Einstein. Or we can choose to turn and face and heal the wounds and the blocks that are holding us back. So then, of course, that leads us to the question, but how? The tyranny of the how, as Tony Robbins likes to state. How is somatic healing the body? This is what I was mentioning earlier. If the trauma is housed in the body, the open trauma loop is stuck in the body, working with the body is the key to heal. I use something called brain spotting. There's other things called EMDR or somatic healing therapy. I love brain spotting so much. I became a facilitated a certified facilitator. I went out and got certified. I had to know more about this because it literally was life-changing. I literally tried everything. I tried hypnosis, QHHT, of course, affirmations, meditations, journaling, breath work. I mean, I could go on and on and on. Yes, some of those things moved the needle a little bit, but it was marginal. It was like micro movements. When I tried brain spotting, it was like it blew the lid off of my healing journey. And that is why I had to bring awareness, get trained, and share this with the world. This is very interesting. I just had a stink bug join us. If you are on the YouTube channel, you'll see that we have a little bug joining us on the curtain here. Sorry, distracted. Coming back. Staying focused here. So why does it work? Why does brain spotting work? So just briefly, what I do is I use a pointer. We'll trace the pointer across the screen. If you do this on Zoom with me, you can also do it in person if you're local here in Wisconsin. But I'll use the pointer to track across the screen, and using your both your physical sensations, your emotions, and also your eyes will determine the access point to your trauma through your eyes. So the eyes are directly connected to the limbic brain through the optical nerve. So that optical nerve runs straight back from the eye back to the back of the brain. And we'll use that access point to get into the body. And now my nervous system is going to be very calm. It's going to be very safe and indicating to you that it is safe for you to trust and to allow that to come up, allow us to access that trauma in a safe way. The body will then sense my nervous system state and allow your nervous system to relax and allow that trauma to be accessed. Once the body starts to allow that trauma to be accessed, then all you have to do is keep your focus and attention on the sensations in the body. It's that simple. And it's really crazy how EMDR is something similar, but a bit more abrasive. It is amazing how soft this modality is. That even just working with the body, if you work with someone else through somatic response or somatics experiencing, I think it's called, it's a similar experience. It's very soft. And your body, like I said, the mother that's nurturing and holding your soul so deeply desires to heal you and to offer to you the information that is necessary to reprogram the subconscious, desensitize the triggers, and release this trauma loop from the body. So purely through your focus and attention on the sensations in the body will handle the rest. That is the beautiful part about this is you can't do it wrong, and there's really nothing for you to do because the body, if you think about it, if you get cut on your arm, it knows how to heal. It will heal you. It doesn't need you to do anything but create the proper environment. If you're not drinking water, if you're pouring poison over your cut, if you're ingesting high processed foods and lots of sugar, that wound will struggle to heal because we're not providing the proper environment. But through our focus and attention, the compassionate witness of both the facilitator and you, the experiencer, we provide the proper environment for the body to release and heal. And that's it. Some will say after 6 sessions of brain spotting, you will notice a significant difference. I will say, as much as I want to offer you the quick fix, the overnight, yes, it can be this fast and easy. I have to be honest with you. We can do it as quickly as you want, but it likely will still continue to take time because you learn again through life bringing you these mirrors and these triggers to help you see what it is that needs to be addressed next. So it's also very important that this is done in connection with someone else. And I do offer on my YouTube channel a live brain spotting session. So if you want to try it out, you can go over there. But also know that it very much has to do with the live connection of those two nervous systems in training to each other. And even just in general, when it comes to trauma healing, regardless of the modality, connection is a very important piece. A compassionate witness, someone who understands you and sees you for who you truly are and allows you to be truly seen maybe even for the first time in your life, is tremendously healing. Not to mention, it's proof that the world can be a safe place. It helps you rebuild trust, obviously creates social networks and helps you build resilience. It also builds your conflict resolution skills, and it creates the evidence for the brain that just because something difficult comes up between you and the facilitator or you and your mother, you can work through it. It doesn't have to take you down or kill you. Okay. So that's just a brief synopsis on how it works. I don't want to get too deep into that. But lastly, your purpose is also part of the healing process. That remembering that this causes us to feel like there's something wrong with us, or I'm not good enough, or I'm not worthy, or what do I have to offer, right? That's what we're healing. And part of the evidence is what comes through seeing that you do have inherent value and worth. You can contribute something amazing and awesome. There's a special gift in you that only you have. Nobody else can offer what you have. And it's really amazing to see how your gifts and your talents and your abilities start to bloom and blossom after you heal and remove these traumas. Now, I know on the podcast you won't be able to see me, but I tend to use my hands to explain this. And essentially, if you think about your purpose as being in your heart, and even the core essence of who you are, your original design, I get a strong sense is in your heart. And as you experience these feelings of not being safe or seen or heard or cared for or loved, and you're forced to suppress them, you press down that trauma, that emotion, and it presses down on top of who you are and who you are made to be. And then it happens again, and you press that one down. And then it happens again, and you press that one down. Sorry, I just hit the microphone. And you just keep pressing all of these emotions on top of these restrictions, these limitations, these limiting beliefs. And they just press and press and press down on who you were made to be and that natural talent and gift that you were meant to bring to the world. But the beauty is, when you heal, you are removing them, pulling those up and out. And underneath, who you were made to be is still there. You begin to self-actualize. You start to find meaning and fulfillment in your purpose. Life actually has potential for being good again, or maybe even for the first time in your entire life. Life can be not only fun and enjoyable, but freaking awesome. And the crazy part is, while the healing continues, it's a perpetual lifelong journey. So does the growth, so does the expansion, so do the gifts and talents. And you become stronger and stronger, brighter and brighter, more and more powerful. And it's incredible. It is truly astonishing how much is pent up inside of you. So, briefly, before we wrap it up for the day, the phases of healing. I want to let you know sort of what to anticipate if you're ready to embark on this journey. So, the first step is to start to turn down the activated nervous system. We need to start to exercise the vagus nerve, which is in charge of moving us from fight or flight or into rest and digest. We want to move into rest and digest predominantly in the early stages. It is not a indefinite state. We are there until we feel strong enough to start to move back and forth between an activated and a deactivated, an activated or a rest state. In doing this, through the brain spotting or the somatic healing of whatever modality you choose, we are desensitizing triggers and we are working with the nervous system to start to regulate it. You have been dysregulated for the vast majority of your life if you have been living with this. We are starting to move towards regulation. We also have to work on boundaries and communication and asking for what you need. All of these things are necessary to create the safety mechanism that would have been created had you had someone to teach you how to do those things early on. Then we can start, once we have our own healthy defense mechanisms and safety, we are not cutting ourselves off from the world, but we are engaging with the world in a safe way. We know how to keep ourselves safe. we can then realign to our original design. That's rediscovery of yourself and your new talents and gifts that I mentioned that start to come online. Then you start to learn to make friends with your activated nervous system state. It no longer causes you to shut down to experience nervous system activation. You see, we need to be activated if we're going to step into our purpose. If we're going to make the world a better place, we have to have activation consciously at certain times. We'll have to learn to make friends with it, though. We don't want to interpret this as a negative thing anymore. We want to start to see activation as a good thing when we are doing it consciously. We're consciously working with the nervous system and the vagus nerve to move between activation and rest consistently. We want to spend a vast majority of our time in both. Well, how do I say that better? We want to spend a predetermined amount of time in each of those nervous system states. For me, it's about 70-30. I like to be pretty productive. I love my work. I love to get things done, but I also recognize that there comes a point where I have reached my limit and it's time for at least 30% of my time to be spent in rest and recuperation, healing. And the interesting part about that nervous system state is it's called the parasympathetic nervous system state, but it's also associated with healing, rest, digest, growth, and repair. So we cannot grow, we are not repairing, we are not healing if we're not in that calm, rested state. Then we start to change our state of consciousness. We are shifting our beliefs. We are overcoming inertia. We're putting ourselves out there. We're starting to give our gift out to the world and see our value and worth reflected back to us. And if you want more information, all of the different stages, I do have videos on my YouTube channel about those. Otherwise, we'll do that again here in the near future. But this is just sort of the overview. And then there's just the constant state of evolution after that. Once your gifts come online, you're starting to offer your purpose out into the world. People are reflecting back to you your value and worth. You start to alchemize your purpose. It just continues to evolve and expand from there. Things just keep getting better and better and better. So now that you understand all of that, the next question is, are you ready? Are you willing to make a change? Are you ready to face the shadows in the closet? So it's important to remember that change happens when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. Say it again. Change happens when the pain of staying the same is greater than the pain of change. Now, oftentimes we can tell ourselves that the shadows in the closet are so scary and so dangerous that I would rather just ignore them, that I'm actually preventing myself from experiencing pain by turning away from them, by pretending they're not there. But the truth is, we create lifelong suffering by refusing to look at the shadows, that we keep them there by ignoring them, and they will continue to block us, and we will continue to thirst for that unquenchable thirst. We will continue to seek, we will continue to distract, and of course, we will require coping mechanisms because it's intolerable. So I ask you today to consider a perspective shift, because the true pain is a life of suffering. That temporary pain, temporary discomfort of focusing on the healing that is necessary will give you freedom from the life of suffering that you are currently committed to. So it's up to us to create a world that we want to live in. There is no one coming to save you. And that is the beautiful lesson, the beautiful gift that God, source, divine creator, universe, whatever you want to say, brings to you through life to help you see where you need to heal. We heal so that we can fully self-actualize, because it is the solution to depression and anxiety. It is the solution to the pain and this discomfort. It is the solution to the seeking. It is the solution to crime and corruption. It is the solution, dare I say, to a vast majority of the world's problems. A bold statement, I know, but it is my personal opinion, so I'm allowed to have it. I hope you can join me on that one. So, in conclusion, healing trauma is a critical step to unblocking ourselves from our life purpose so that we can finally manifest a life that we truly deserve, to manifest our abundance birthright. It's important to acknowledge and validate the impact that trauma has on our lives and seek out support and resources that can finally help you move forward. No one can heal in isolation. You cannot do this alone. I love you, my friends. Thank you for listening to the first Vibe Mentor podcast episode, and I hope you will join us. I look forward to speaking with you again. Take care. Namaste.